Hello there. This is a German Army knife. This is a 108 millimeter or 4¼ inch long knife when closed. These began to be produced in the 1970s for the West German Army. Most of them would have a German eagle. Here, we'll get to what I think is going on here in a bit. But the contract was first awarded to Victorinox, hence the familiar look of this knife. It is essentially a Victorinox by any other name. Now, Victorinox got the contract for this, but there were also 5 or 6 other civilian contractors that the West German Army, I keep dropping it, sorry, that the West German Army contracted these out for. But from my research, all the steel was, or the majority of the steel at least, was supplied to them by Victorinox. This is not made by Victorinox. It's made by a company called CCM, which was one of the government contractors. Now, these knives became available as surplus in the 90s after German reunification. And they are, or they were, I don't know how common they are now, but they were quite common, and there were probably hundreds of thousands of these made, if not more than that. And so they're not, to my knowledge, worth very much. But they're a really nice knife. I love this knife. Now, they came with a spear point blade, and a saw. I like how they designed that. They've got that little swoop to the back of the saw so that you can grab your main blade fairly easily. But they came with a saw. The early versions came plain, but a lot of times you will see them with blade covers, and the newer designs, or the later designs, had like a nail file here on this side. They had your main blade, they had a saw, they had the ubiquitous corkscrew, because everybody knows when you're invading different countries, you want to make sure you drink plenty of their wine. That's the stupidest thing I ever saw on a military knife. But that's, and then if I can get it open, my fingernails are not all that great anymore. There's a punch or an awl, or whatever you want to call that. This knife, remember I mentioned that there usually is a German crest on this? Well, Victorinox came out with a knife that was basically this exact same knife. It even had the OD green scales, but instead of the German eagle here, they had a rectangular clean area that you could put your initials on. And it was called the Victorinox Trooper. And later on they made one with the ubiquitous red scales that Victorinox is famous for, that had the Swiss Army Cross on it, and they called that a Safari Trooper, but it was the same exact knife. And now Victorinox made a bunch of knives on this in a 108 millimeter frame, or this 108 millimeter length. A bunch of different ones. There are several versions that sprang up from this one that had like 3 layers or 1 layer or whatnot. It just, this was a very popular, and still I think is a very popular size in the Victorinox lineup. Now this is not a Victorinox, and you see this blank space here. When I open this blade up, It is made by a company called CCM, and that was a manufacturer that was contracted for the German military. But if you see this, I don't know. I know that RAMPF, Humpf, I think is how you pronounce that. I lived in Germany for a bit, but I was very young, and I don't do German very well at all. I can't read it anymore, and I could only read it in a rudimentary way then. But this looks suspiciously like Victorinox's. The thing that Victorinox does with a lot of companies, if you're like me and you look around for Vicks at flea markets and things like that, you'll find a lot of Victorinox knives that are stamped with a company logo. Okay, that's what this looks like. So what this makes me think is that this is a civilian production version by an authorized manufacturer, which means the quality of this knife is going to be the same, but this was probably not a surplus military knife. This is probably one that was made later for civilian use. It does not matter. This knife is very well built. I mean, you heard that snap, right? It's very well built. I love the olive drab color. It's got a lot of heft to it for a knife like this, and I love it. I would rather have this than I would a Victorinox, the red-handled Victorinox. Now, an olive drab Victorinox wouldn't hurt my feelings either, but this is essentially the same knife. In my opinion, I love it. If you look, the blade is very solid and thick. Both of them. This is a really nice knife, and if I were to carry it, I would not carry this in my pocket though. It's a bit big for pocket carry for me. I know there are guys that carry like, 5-inch bladed folders, tactical folders and stuff in their pocket and stuff like that. That's all a personal kind of, what you can get away with. But when I shove my hand in my pocket, I don't want a bunch of jumbled up, a bunch of stuff in my pocket, big and bulky. When I sit down, I don't want a big imprint sticking out of my pocket, for everybody to see. And I just don't, it's not comfortable to me. If I sit down and my pants are kind of tight, it's going to kind of be uncomfortable on my leg, all kinds of stuff. So I like smaller knives for pocket use. When I carry this, I will probably carry it. I have a couple of small sheaths that I use for knives in this kind of range, and I would just carry it like that on my hip. But it's a fantastic knife in my opinion. The design is lovely. It's very well built, and I think the steel is good quality, and it didn't cost very much. So if you run across one of them and you like this type of knife, I don't think you can go wrong as long as you don't pay a ton of money for one, because I don't think that they're going to bring very much money. So if it's too expensive, then you're probably paying more than the knife is worth. But I didn't, like I said, I didn't pay hardly anything for this one, and I'm really, really glad to have it. So I thought I'd give you a look at it. There's, it's got a bit of military history behind it, which is always cool. We'll sharpen this up at a later date. Thanks for watching. Much appreciated. German Army knife. 108 millimeter. I'll talk to you later.